I'm Mac Thornberry, Texas, Chairman of the Armed Services Committee. As y'all know, Congress has passed for 54 straight years a Defense Authorization Act. I think it's particularly important that we do so this year on a bipartisan basis. There's lots of turmoil in the world. We are approaching the end of an administration, and there are questions at home and around the world and among our service members about where the United States is going, what our policies are going to be. One of the best things we could do is to show them all, especially the men and women who serve, that we are doing our job by providing for the support, the equipment, the pay that is required in the military to defend our country. We have two primary thrusts in this year's Defense Authorization Act. One is reform, the other is readiness. On reform, we've got 5 major packages of reform. They include acquisition, military health care, commissaries, organizational reform, including some Goldwater-Nichols changes for the first time in 30 years, and then an overhaul of the Uniform Code of Military Justice, which came about because of some of the flaws that came to light with the sexual harassment cases. We required a commission to look at the UCMJ. They came back with their recommendations, and this year those recommendations are being implemented. So there's a lot of reform. Readiness is the other thrust. We have too many pilots that are not getting the minimum number of training hours they need to stay proficient in their airplanes. We are cannibalizing aircraft. We are losing people. And as we dig deeper into this problem, it becomes evidently more serious. We don't fix it in this year's bill, but we do start to turn it around using the same approach that was used between the Bush and Obama administration. That is, fully fund the base requirements and have a bridge fund for the overseas deployment that will last into next year, when a new president will have the opportunity to look at the deployments, look at the funding, reconcile what he or she thinks needs to be done. Again, that's exactly what Congresses under a Democratic majority did in June of 2008. We're following the same template this year to begin to turn this readiness crisis around, but also give the next president the chance to evaluate what the deployments and where we are. One of our stars on our committee is the vice chair for our Readiness subcommittee, to whom I'm pleased to yield at this point, the gentlelady from New York, Elise Stefanik.
Thanks, Chairman Thornberry. My name is Elise Stefanik. I'm proud to represent New York's 21st District, which is home to a critical naval nuclear training facility, and Fort Drum, home of the 10th Mountain Division, the most deployed division in the U.S. Army since 9/11. As a member of the House Armed Services Committee and Vice Chair of the Readiness Subcommittee, I am proud of the bipartisan work on the FY17 NDAA. This NDAA takes important steps to strengthen our defense capabilities and gives our brave men and women in uniform the resources they need to keep us safe. It also includes an important and deserved pay raise for our troops while working to stop funding gaps that are harming our military readiness. In addition, this bill includes important legislation that I co-sponsored to ensure our armed forces' end strength will not be depleted as a result of this administration's misguided reduction of troops. I was proud to help us pass this out of committee by an overwhelmingly bipartisan vote of 60-2, and I look forward to helping pass this on the House floor this week. Thank you very much, and I will turn it over to our speakers.
Great. Thanks. Thanks, Elise. Morning.
Morning.
It's a busy week in the House, and I want to touch on a couple of areas of progress for the American people that we are in the middle of right now. First, I want to thank Mac Thornberry and Elise Stefanik. I want to thank these two members who are the bulwark of the Armed Services Committee for their work on the National Defense Bill. This bill does the vital things. It gives our troops a pay raise. It funds their training. It continues to prevent the government from transferring Guantanamo detainees to American soil. At its core, this bill recognizes the need to build a 21st century military. Right now, there are real and documented shortfalls in the ability of our troops to execute their missions. This bill authorizes the necessary force structure, equipment, and funding to close this readiness gap. It also continues on the path of reforming the Pentagon so that we can keep our edge and better adapt to the threats that we face. This is a strong bill, and with dozens of amendments on the floor, this House will have a chance to make it even stronger. Second, last week we saw the House unite to work together on a bipartisan basis to confront the opioid epidemic that is sweeping our country. All in all, we passed 18 bipartisan bills. Now, we need to build on this progress by taking our ideas and working with the Senate to get a bill on the President's desk in short order, and we're going to be going to conference this week. So, we will be promoting our Republican lawmakers who will present us with the House Senate Conference Committee. I have asked the Majority Leader, Mr. McCarthy, to serve on this panel and to head up our efforts here among the House Republicans to get this done. This fight against opioid abuse will not end overnight, but we cannot afford to let it up, and we are on offense on this fight. Thank you.
Well, good morning. We had a very busy week last week. As the Speaker talked about the 18 bills, bipartisan, that we were able to deal with on opioid abuse. We have the same goal in mind as the Senate. I thank the Speaker for appointing me to the conference. We look forward to working with our Senate counterparts and get this done as quickly as possible and onto the President's desk. We're following up with a very busy week last week with another busy week this week. You heard from Chairman Mac Thornberry and Lee Stefanik from NDAA. It sets the course of putting our military back on the right track. Ability for training to have the resources that they need, and I want to emphasize the 2.1% cost of living increase that our military men and women deserve. Besides that, we'll have the MilCon VA bill on the floor. I want you to look at what we're doing when it comes to the VA. You're watching there that we're the funding dealing with suicide, and just as important, the backlog that is happening on our disability claims. So a great deal of work in this, something that I personally focused a great deal on. And thirdly, Zika. We'll have $622 million added to the almost $600 million already funded for fiscal year 16. There are 113, as of the latest, pregnant women in America that have Zika. This is something that we have to continue to make sure we have the funding for, to do the research. This will be more than $1.2 billion just in this year. We want to get to the appropriation process that we're starting this week, the funding into this FY17. We want to make sure that we're able to find the cure that is needed to deal with Zika. I yield back.
It's critically important that we provide for a strong national defense. And the NDAA that Chairman Thornberry is bringing forward gives our troops the tools that they need to successfully carry out their mission, which they do so well. So that's going to be an important vote. We look forward to moving that bill through the House and ultimately getting it signed by the President so that our troops can not only have the tools they need, but the pay raise that they deserve. In addition to that, we're reprioritizing existing funds to make sure that the Zika attack is fully funded. This is a serious problem throughout our country. Look, in South Louisiana, we have a lot of mosquitoes, and we don't like them. And we spray to go after and kill those mosquitoes where they breed. One of the other things we're doing, in addition to reprioritizing funds, is there's a bill by Bob Gibbs that goes after EPA regulations that actually make it harder to spray for mosquitoes. Right now, EPA regulations under the Clean Water Act actually make it harder for our local communities to get the permits they need to go and kill the mosquitoes where they breed by sources of water. And these are federally approved pesticides. And so this is an important bill as part of a package to make sure that we're combating Zika, and it's going to be an important vote on the House floor to push back on regulations that actually make it harder to kill mosquitoes. So I'm looking forward to a vote on that bill as well.
This time of year, we come together to celebrate Armed Forces Day. Thousands of people in Spokane will line the streets this weekend for our annual Armed Forces Torchlight Parade. It's actually the largest of its kind in the country. The Armed Forces Torchlight Parade is just one way our local community comes together to say thank you to the men and women serving nearby at Fairchild Air Force Base, as well as across the country and around the world. This nation was built on service before self. And those who serve in the military are a constant reminder that defending the American people is the chief responsibility of our government. And as the world becomes more dangerous and as the threats become more complex, America's leadership is needed on the world stage now more than ever. While we can never say thank you enough, perhaps the best way that we can show our gratitude is to make sure our troops are ready with the support and resources they need to keep us safe. And that's what the National Defense Authorization Act is all about. And I want to join in thanking Chairman Mac Thornberry and Representative Elise Stefanik for their commitment and their leadership on this important legislation. With the NDAA, we're not just spending more, we're spending better. We're using taxpayer dollars wisely and stressing the importance of rebuilding our military. That's exactly what the people's representatives should be doing, reviewing, rethinking, and possibly eliminating programs. In fact, we should be having that same conversation we've had for the Defense Department for every program and every agency. But instead, what we see is so much of the government is on autopilot. It's funded without the proper review of Congress. And that's why it is important that we're doing our job on the budget, on the appropriations bills, as well as addressing unauthorized spending that currently takes place within this government.
You got any questions? Deirdre.
Last week you said you had a good meeting with Donald Trump, and over the weekend you announced that your teams were sitting down with his campaign to talk about policy. Just wondering, the focus on Donald Trump's comments and relationship with women over the past years has been a big focus the last couple of days. Does that give you any pause about giving an official endorsement?
Look, I'm not going to get into the day-to-day up and down of this campaign. Just so you know, don't get into the habit of thinking I'm going to comment on what's up and what's down and what article is here and what article is there. I'm focused on policies and principles and unifying our party. We just began this process. It is well underway, and that's what we are focused on.
What can you say about the policy
I am not. The policy process just got started. We're having the kinds of conversations that are necessary to make sure that we are unifying around our commonly held principles and policies. Chad.
Speaker, so there are some members, obviously, in your conference who differ from your position you took a couple weeks ago about whether or not to jump full feet in with Trump here. What do you say to them? I know your goal is to unify, but what do you say to them who some are like, wait a minute, this is, we wish you would have gone further, or we're afraid that half step wasn't the right thing?
Look, I think we all realize that to pretend party unification after one of the most divisive primaries in memory is to go into the fall at half strength. That is why what we want is real unification over our common principles and policies that we all agree with and believe in. And those are the kinds of productive conversations we're having. So, Chad, we can get in full strength in the fall and win the election. Everything's up for grabs. Supreme Court, Congress, the presidency. Andrew.
What's the reasoning behind this decision to dump this provision on women registering for the draft from the Defense Authorization?
Well, I'm not saying he's the reason. I didn't mean to say it that way. I'll just say that the chairman and the author of that amendment put it inside their preferred policy. And if you want, Mac, I'd be happy to defer to you.
Yeah, I just make two comments. One is there has not been a review of whether we need selective service since 1994. And so my strong view is that we need to ask the big questions and figure out whether we need it. If so, for what purpose? What would happen if we did away with it? If we do have it, who's going to be involved? The second issue is this got very complex with scoring. So it costs some money on discretionary spending to register women. It turns out CBO says that if you register women, it saves money on mandatory spending because fewer of them will be eligible for student financial aid. And under our cut-go rules, we couldn't even debate an amendment to take that out, which left us in an impossible position where you had an issue members could not even debate or change. So I think what the Rules Committee decided is they will deal with this in the rule. In the meantime, I think we need to have a broad look at the selective service, whether we need it at all, and if so, for whom.
Last question.
Luke.
Speaker Ryan, new NBC News poll question. Who do you trust more to lead the Republican Party? Donald Trump, 58, Paul Ryan, 39.
I hope it's Donald Trump. He's getting the nomination. I mean,
Leader of the party?
he should. He's wrapping up the nomination. Good Lord, I hope it is, because the person who's getting the nomination of our party is the person to lead our party. Thank you.